Hi, it's Jen Defoe Turner. Welcome to Cultivate. Up next, we have Sarah Griffiths. She's a writer and speaker who is passionate about encouraging and equipping women to trust God, surrender their fears, and step into courageous living. She is a self-proclaimed book-buying addict who lives in British Columbia, Canada. Sarah has 2 adult children and a son-in-law. She is married to her best friend. Today, Sarah is going to be sharing a workshop called How to Build a Confident and Engaging Stage Presence. Today, she's going to share tips and tricks you won't want to miss.
Welcome back to another Cultivate session at Christian Creative Symposium. Today's presenter is Sarah Griffiths, and we're going to talk about stage presence. Now, Sarah, tell me, why are you talking about stage presence when most people really are terrified of public speaking?
Yeah, that's an actual thing. I think it's called glossophobia, being afraid of speaking in public. Yeah, so I actually have been an actor and director in theater for years, and I love acting and directing. And I've acted in front of hundreds and hundreds of people, but whenever I got up to speak, I would all of a sudden get nervous and I would get flustered and wouldn't know which direction to go next. So that is why I had to really hone that and figure out how was I going to get past myself, past my ego, past my pride, in order to share these amazing things that God was giving me to share.
That makes sense, because when you're acting, you can put on a different persona. You can be someone else. But when you're getting up to speak, especially as an author, a speaker, any type of artist, where maybe you're even promoting your work or at least promoting your message, the message God has given you. Now it's all about you. It's the real authentic you. So I can see how that would be different. Today, you're going to help us learn how to have a good stage presence. Is that right?
That's my hope.
Oh, great.
Yes.
Okay, so where do we start with that?
I like to remember an acronym that's called HEART, HEART. And the first one that I like to remember with that is something called heard. So H is heard, which stands for me. R is your audience hearing you, your tone, your diction. I used to slur my words a lot. My mom would get mad at me, not mad at me, but she would get frustrated a little bit when she couldn't quite understand what I was saying. And also being an actor, I really had to work on my diction so that when I was projecting, and that's another thing, projecting, even if we're using a mic, is our audience hearing us? Are they able to track with us? Because if we're not using our diction and we're not projecting our voice, they're not going to hear us, and the message will be
It's an important first step, and it's just a practical one. And to me, I think that's, some people like to skip the mic check and things like that, but you can't skip those things. If people can't hear you, they can't hear your message.
Not at all. And I've actually seen people walk up to a mic and then step back from the mic when the mic is on a stand. Step into it. It's okay. That's what it's there for.
Right. Yeah, I think we're afraid to hear our voice in those speakers and hear our voice projected, but we want that.
Yeah, and it is a little bit off-putting if you're not used to it, because all of a sudden you're hearing your voice. We don't all like to listen to our own voices, and so that does set us off just a little bit. But it is great to step into that mic. And when I say project your voice, I don't mean yell into the mic. I mean allow your voice to come out of your mouth like you would if you're out with a bunch of friends and you're having a good time and your voice is coming out. That is how we want your voice to be projected.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the other one with, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead. I want to hear more about this.
The other one with heard is, are they hearing your point? Sometimes if we have too many points, it's going to be all convoluted. So are they going home and are they hearing your point? Is it your one main point? Is it 3 points? Today I have 5 points, which I don't often do. I try to stick to 1 or 3. And so that is something else to consider.
I think especially for people who are creatives and we think a little bit more in a story arc or things like that, so much in bullet points. But I
Yes.
think when we're speaking, that's a different thing. You have to have clear points and move then from one to the next.
Yes, exactly. And I love how you mentioned the story arc. That is so important. I have often used Andy Stanley's Communicating for a Change. It's a great book. If people haven't read it yet, it is, he has a map in there that he uses for speaking that really helps me keep things to a key point. I even use it for my writing sometimes. So it's very helpful.
Okay. And so most of what we're talking about, writers and speakers, but in this conference, we might have other artists too. I would think other kinds of artists sometimes have to get in front of a microphone, get on a stage.
They do. Yeah, they do. If you have any kind of a message or a product, or maybe you're a painter or an illustrator or anything like that, you may have to get either in front of people in a meeting, or you may also have to get up on a stage to share something. And all these points are still relevant on how you're going to share your point.
Okay, great. So we want to be heard, both our voice and our message, the points of our message. What's next?
That's right. E is for aesthetic. Not only your aesthetic, but your environment. And so your aesthetic is really important. And when I say, I'm going to mention jewelry, but it's for both guys and girls, because both guys and girls are wearing jewelry. And so keep in mind when you're getting up to speak somewhere, that if your jewelry is really, you can wear loud, fun jewelry if that's you, but just make sure it's not moving or making any noise. And same thing with and things like that. Maybe take them off for that one day, or maybe only wear like one or two. And that is very helpful to keep your audience engaged with you and keep them tracking with you, and not be listening to your earrings or your bracelets or things like that. And then
that's a great one. And I love big jewelry, but I know that if I'm speaking somewhere, especially if I have one of those over the ear mics like that, I wouldn't wear these hard earrings like this. I have a whole collection of big leather earrings because they're soft.
Oh, yes, exactly. Because I love dangly fun earrings. I didn't wear them today because I knew I was wearing my in-ear and I didn't want to have things, but I love them. And just ones that are not clinky and clangy. And the whole idea of the past 10 years ago, even, there was this whole thing about not wearing jewelry that moved. But that's not the case anymore, because nowadays people wear what they want to wear. So it's just being observant of what is loud and what is not loud.
Okay.
And then the other one is for aesthetic is environment. So it's important. Sometimes you can't control your environment. Sometimes you're somewhere else, maybe at a meeting or someone else's stage, and you have no control over that environment. But if you do, maybe you're somebody who likes to sit on a stool, or you're somebody who likes to have something next to you to have your stuff on, then ask for those things. It's okay to ask for things when you're speaking. And also online now, we have to think about online a lot. And it's not so much, I've seen a lot of speakers who have busyness behind them, and that's okay as long as it's you. Are you projecting who you are to people when you're speaking? Yeah, less is more. I don't really have the less is more idea behind me, but behind me are things that are really important to me, that I love, and who are a bit of who I am. And so that is also great. They've been a topic of conversation sometimes when I've been in meetings, and so it's been really good that way. So is your aesthetic projecting who you are? And also, is it too distracting?
One thing someone told me one time was to make sure there's contrast between you and your background, because, well, I saw someone one time wearing an all black dress on a stage with a black backdrop. And then all you could see was her head and hands. It looked like a mime. You don't want that.
No, it's the same thing in theater, actually. Whenever you're doing a show, you want the costumes with the staging to still all be cohesive, but you don't want to blend too much. So that is something in theater as well.
Okay, really that's a good one.
And one thing with aesthetic, with your environment as well, is you don't want to try and mimic other people when it's not who you are, if that makes sense. I've seen other people's props where it's got that glitteriness, or it's got just something that's fun and loud, and it really suits them. but it's not me. And so whenever I sit in front of it, I just feel like I can't relax into my session.
Okay.
So definitely
All
be
right.
yourself.
Be yourself. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay. Next, I think we're at A, right?
A is authentic. And speaking of being yourself, let's move into authentic. So give yourself permission to be yourself. I cannot tell you the number of times that in the past, and even now once in a while, I still struggle with it, the whole comparison game. There have been times when my husband and I have spoken at marriage conferences with other speakers, and I'll watch these other amazing speakers and how the audience is just tracking with them and they're loving what they're saying. And then even my husband is a really engaging speaker. He's very charismatic, and that's who he is in real life. It's not just when he's on stage. And so he actually is who he normally is. He's very authentic on stage. And I would get up and I would try to be that same persona, and it would fall flat because it came off as totally fake. And so really just give yourself permission to be yourself. And then the other thing is authentic stories. Our stories build trust with our audience. And whether it's your story or someone else's story who's given you permission to share it, or something from a book that you've read, but it has to mean something to you. Those stories are really important, and audiences will track with them, they'll engage with them, and then they'll in turn engage with you, and they will have that trust with you. But that only comes from being authentic and who you are.
And I know our culture today, we really appreciate authenticity. So I think that's a great tip, to share who you are. But what about getting really personal, though? What about that?
What about sharing stories?
Yeah, some stories could be too personal. I guess it depends on your audience.
Oh, I see where you're going. It does depend on your audience. When I'm speaking at a marriage conference, my husband and I used to do the sex talk. They would always give that to us. I don't know why. They always gave that to us. And they always wanted to hear us talk about it. I would never share stories that I share there in another environment. It's not appropriate. But in that environment, there are stories that are very personal that I need to share in order for people to hear. Painful stories for people to track with me and go, okay, it's not just all lovey-dovey stuff that they're talking about here. They're actually going to track with me. But I would never share that when I get up and speak at an event about a book I've written, unless it's about that topic.
It goes back to that whole idea of the hearing, because if your story detracts from your message, then it doesn't help people hear the message.
Exactly.
That's a great point.
Yeah. So and they can be fun stories too. They don't have to be these stories that are hurtful, or they can totally be fun stories. My husband used to start one, not at a marriage conference. He's spoken all over the place for his work, but he would start a story about how he was arrested one time, and it ended up being something that was a mistake, but he was arrested. Yeah, I know. But he would start with that, and he would end the first part with going, "Sir, you're being arrested for," and I'll tell you the rest at the end of the talk. And everybody go, "No." And sometimes, so those kind of things are fun because they get people engaged and tracking with you, and it's a great thing.
And it can help lighten a heavy topic.
Yeah, very much. Especially the way he told it was dramatic and fun, and exactly.
Yeah. Wonderful. Okay, we're on R, I think.
R. Yeah, R is for rehearse. And that might sound weird that we just finished talking about authentic, but rehearse, we want to make sure that we're running through our talk. Even if we're just doing point form in our talk, and maybe we have notes that are either written completely out, maybe you have notes that are point form, but are you running through that a number of times so that you know what it is that you want to talk about, that you want to say, and your audience can track with you? It may not seem that important, but it really is. I have had times where I have not rehearsed. I'm just going to wing it. I'm not even going to think through what I want to say. And then I get up, and all I can remember are my points. But I can't remember my stories. I can't remember any of the transitions that lead me from one place to the next. So it's a great tool to have.
That is a good one. I have to admit, that's one of my hard ones. I've had to learn that over the years. And what helped me learn it is that inevitably, if I didn't rehearse, if I wasn't well prepared, I would end the talk and I'd be in the back and then all of a sudden realize, oh, that really important thing I wanted
Yes.
to say, I forgot
Yes.
to say it. So
Yes.
yeah, it doesn't help people to hear part of the message and then the big takeaway gets left behind because you
Yes.
weren't prepared.
Yes. Or you don't even start with the right story. So now you haven't created trust and buy-in, and then you try to teach or give your message, and now they don't want to listen to what you want to say because you haven't shared that story that helps them relate with point.
Sarah, I think there has to be a real balance, though, between rehearsing and making it canned, because I saw someone with a really great TED Talk one time, and TED Talks are short. They had actually memorized the whole thing word for word, and I could tell.
Yes. No, there is. And there has to be also room for Holy Spirit to speak. So I always go up with notes, at least with point form notes, so that I can remember, okay, what's my transition or what are my main points? So that way, if I get this sense that I need to stop here and talk about something a little bit different, like still in the same vein, but I need to mention something that wasn't in my notes, I can easily get back to my point. And so it's a very good thing that you're saying there, because it's true. If it comes off too canned, or if it comes off, it does come off fake. Most TED Talks, I think they actually are supposed to memorize them.
Really? This one, I know it was definitely memorized word for word. And I prefer it when people memorize their points and their illustrations and things, but they let the words flow a little more naturally.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Which is why I prefer the point form note. If I'm going to have notes anywhere, I usually just have them on a little card sitting somewhere so that I can just look down at it if I need it. But I'm not reading to them. Or
that's
either reciting or reading.
Yes, either way. And I attended a talk one time where a woman said, my husband is the speaker. I'm not a speaker, so I'm going to read this to you. And she read it to us. And I was, at least try, even if it's not your thing. Again, it comes back to being authentic.
Yes, exactly. And that's okay if you're like, if you say something like, my husband's one who normally he gets up for his job and that's what he does. He speaks and I don't all the time. So just bear with me, but we're going to get through this. But if you have to say that in order for you to feel less nervous, that's okay. It's fine, especially if you're not someone who speaks a lot at different events. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Okay. Are we almost at the end?
We're at T. T is for trust God. So you've practiced your tone, your diction, your projection, your main point that you feel that God has led you to share with your audience. Your environment is great. Your aesthetic on the outside is great. You're being authentic with your stories and you rehearsed it. And it goes back to what we just talked about. Sometimes you're going to have to go off the beaten path with what you've practiced. And you have to, for me, I have to really trust that God has given me this message. He's given me something to say to the people, and he's going to open the hearts that need to be opened. Not everybody's going to like me. Not everybody is going to want to be my friend, and that is okay. But the ones who need to hear it are going to hear it. And I have done the work that I need to do to get me to this point. And now God needs to do, he's taken me through the whole entire thing, and now he will continue to do the rest.
I think that's so important because oftentimes we think that the result of our talk depends on us. We are called to be faithful and do what's the job that's put in front of us, whether that's out of our comfort zone or not, and then leave the results to the Holy Spirit because he's definitely more capable.
Exactly. And if we're sitting in the back afterwards going, I didn't have that many people come say hi to me or whatever, that's ego. We need to let that go, right? Because we were not called to speak so we can stroke our egos and we can have this prideful moment of, oh, I was so amazing. But we are there because we're messengers of God's word, and we're there because he has given us something to speak, whether it's something to share about our artwork, because maybe he's spoken to others through our artwork and now we're here to share about it, or we're there because God writers and he's now you need to speak about it, and we're like, I don't want to speak about it. But that's what we're there for.
Yeah. And I think it can be a challenge for people who are called to be a speaker because we want to improve our craft, improve our
Yes,
skills, do a better
yes.
job, deliver, give
Mhm.
people what they need. And
Mhm.
yet, the remaining humble and leaving the results to the Holy Spirit is
Yes,
really important. And so I
yes,
think maybe can we add a point to remember to pray? Maybe that needs to be,
yes.
it doesn't
It
work
does
with the
have to be.
acronym, but
It doesn't work. It has, but trusting God, we can make that as part of it. Prayer is before it, during it, after it. It's all the way through it. So yes, that is an important one. Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, that's
Sarah, I
really good.
really appreciate having a professional stage person walk us through this acronym of HEART. Tell people how to get in touch with you and what other resources you may have.
Absolutely. So they can get in touch with me through Facebook at Sarah Griffiths Hugh. Same thing on Instagram, Sarah Griffiths Hugh, and you can just see that on my name right there. And then also on my website, sarahgriffithshugh.com. Yeah, and so they can get in touch with me there. Feel free to email me through my website or message me through Facebook, or actually Instagram might be better because sometimes Facebook hides people who you're not friends with yet on Messenger. So yeah, feel free to get in touch, and I would love to chat with you more about it.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks again, Sarah.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great. It's been really wonderful.